I'm muting all of us. Good evening and welcome to the After Hours Show. My name is Joe in Norway. I'm joined by Professor Anne, our retired college professor, community member at the Daily Kos, and member of the National Council of Independent Scholars, and a contributor to the book, The Political Economy of Art, Making the Nation of Culture. Hey, Anne. Evening.
Hi. Hey, Joe. How's it going?
Howdy. All right. Thought I'd continue our Bean Appreciation series, not just to in hopes of getting Bruce to try one of these out one of these days. We're continuing on our bean love. I'll be making a mung dhokla, or a steamed mung bean cake. It looks kind of like a traditional American yellow cake, but savory with lots of spices. But before we do that, let me share screen here. I was watching bits of the State of the Union the other day, and President Biden he mentioned pontoon boats and a pier in Gaza. Is this what they're setting up here, or is this the 38,000 prepackaged meals for the Gazans?
I think this is the prepackaged meals, but whatever.
38,000 in total.
That's a drop in the ocean, whatever.
In the Mediterranean. He seemed to have some hecklers as well.
Ah, yes.
Some minor disturbances. Anything interesting? I didn't get a chance to see the whole thing.
What are those called? Kafirs? The scarves?
Anyhow.
I need to dig mine out. Anyway, yes.
So I'll be making a steamed cake, savory one, with our friend the mung bean, which you can find in most grocery stores, I would imagine. Not most, maybe at least the international section of your average American grocery store.
Yeah.
You can get mung beans, which are typically sprouted for bean sprouts and whatnot. You can get them whole. You can get them split in half like this. And you can also get them whole completely, which is what we're working with tonight. So these just have none of the hull, which makes it a little more, well, harder to digest. And what I've done...
You have to soak them?
So they've been soaking more or less all day. So minimum 4 hour soak. And we're going to make, this will become our batter. We're going to mix it with a blender on a stick, immersion blender. Season it with some chili, some ginger, some asafoetida, which is or devil's dung, as it's sometimes called, out of the smell, and a little pinch of turmeric, not too much. It'll react with our other friends over here, baking soda, bicarbonate soda, to get the leavening agent in the bean batter. We use a combination of baking soda and an acid, so it could be a limon, or in my case, we're going to save this because it's the last one in the house, and I could use something else, which we have here, which is citric acid. So restaurant grade citric acid, and it's quite efficient. It does the job. Just use a half teaspoon of that, half teaspoon of baking soda, maybe a little less. If you use too much baking soda, you can get a soapy taste. And I think maybe it'll bring out a little bit of the bean paste, and it also reacts with the turmeric. So you have to kind of tone it down. You don't want to do too much there. But what's wonderful about this recipe is that you would imagine most beans are thick, heavy, and dense. But this, with the aeration from the reaction of the citric acid and baking soda, gives it a lift or volume that is just like a fluffy cake, but it's all bean. I'm going to sneak in a little bit, a tablespoon of semolina, because I love that little flavor boost. But if we've got any wheat allergies in the house, just leave it out. It doesn't make much difference. Or you can substitute it with something else. We're going to steam it in the baskets here for 15 minutes, about 12, 15 minutes. Then we're going to flip it upside down, slice it up, and temper. We're going to pour a mixture of tempered sesame, cumin, and 2 kinds of mustard seeds, and a number of curry leaves, and a little chili in there. So we pour that, and you can either use a little bit of sugar or not. So you you toast the seeds and the leaves, mix a little sugar, add a little water, and then when the cake is finished, you pour it over the cake.
I'm hungry already.
Finish it off with a little coriander or cilantro, maybe some coconut, if I remember. And we're good to go.
A shaved coconut or coconut milk, or what?
We're a little high up on the globe for fresh coconuts, although they did have it at the shop. It's just nosebleed of a price, not too local. We'll see. I gotta have some desiccated coconut, but yes, fresh coconut would be the best. I think it's a good recipe, Bruce. I'm telling you, man. You're gonna love it. All right. You got something for us while I get cooking here?
Yeah, let me start yakking about at the front end. The last night was a sort of a sea change for American politics. There was the surveys about the feeling good about Biden were only at 48% before the State of the Union. They went up to 62% in one night. So I think there's a bump. There's going to be a statistical bump. So that should be useful and interesting in surveys, but that's at a very macro level, I think. But it did seem that the Republicans have essentially been drinking their or consuming their own supply, because they assumed that they'd been talking so much about Biden being doddering that they sort of expected him to be doddering when he got there, but he really hasn't changed very much. It appears like he's very old just simply because he doesn't flop his hair all over the place and put on tons of makeup. I mean, that's the difference in some ways. I think they could have, if a professional makeup person really decided to, make Biden more Trump-like, I suppose it would, he'd have a little more color in his face and maybe even darken his hair very slightly so that there's a sort of light gray rather than the white that it is. But it's just these superficial things I think really dominated the analysis last night, and got worse when, and we'll talk about this later. I think we'll have some time to sort of have interplay about it, because it has been a topic of conversation. That is, Katie Britt, for some reason, seems to have a different voice than the one that she presented in the response to the State of the Union. But everyone has been talking about the other details. That is that how bland a kitchen that she has. It's about $100,000 kitchen, though. It has Sub-Zero refrigerators, and it's got all kinds of stuff, but not really. I mean, there's nothing in the image of her kitchen that looks like it's actually been lived in. It looks more like a model home. It's like so weird. And then people, referred to her as a kind of Stepford wife, and so that was interesting as well.
Nancy Pelosi of the right. They
No,
check her ice cream.
It's just more. They thought that she was an AI, that for some reason she'd been generated by artificial intelligence. But the fact is, she's just very stereotypical. She grew up in a rich, a moderate income suburb. Was a cheerleader in high school, a cheerleader in college cheerleaders. That's a whole different kind of culture. I think she was in a sorority. She met her future husband. He played tackle on the Crimson Tide, the Alabama Crimson Tide football team, and he was drafted in the NFL, and he played for a couple of years for the the New England Patriots, and they eventually got married. It's very stereotypical in some ways. Cheerleader marries a football
player. The American dream.
It does have all those elements in it, and it seems pretty clear. And in fact, Tommy Tuberville, her partner, as it were, in being senators from Alabama, said, we chose her because she looked like that. I mean, he was being perfectly honest that she looked like a housewife, I suppose. I don't think he used the word housewife. I have it somewhere else. But anyway, but the fact is, she went to law school at she majored in political science and went to the University of Alabama Law School. So, and she worked in some corporate law stuff, and then became an aide, I think, to Richard Shelby. And so essentially she took over Richard Shelby's senatorial seat. So it seems pretty weirdly isolated, but that's just, but as many people discussed, it was it looks like it's going to be the opening for a Saturday Night Live. The cold open should probably have some erotic version of Katie Britt. And it could be pretty weird, actually. And I mean, it's just has a lot of possibilities, considering how sort of homogeneous the whole image looks. It's worth people looking at.
So you mentioned that she didn't sound like people expected. Now, was she hired before anybody actually saw her in person and speaking? Kind of like people getting hired remotely, have
Oh, no,
someone
no,
else
no, no,
do
no,
the
no.
interview for them?
No, as a senator, I think she has a normal voice, but for some reason she put on this very breathy, kind of weird, um, I don't know. It reminded people of all kinds of things like Drop Dead Gorgeous. Let's see, other there's a whole series of movies that came up. Um, the internet just had a field day. It's actually pretty interesting. Just because they seized on it, they couldn't seize on Biden being essentially normal, a normal politician, because they wanted to look at more crazy shit. And but there were stunts, a Marjorie Taylor Greene mimicked in some ways the rhetorical demand of saying her name, which is, it's a kind of, in some ways, it's very racist. It's a sort of a mocking of the utterance that you, by saying someone's name, you give them more authenticity, and they're much more human in that sense. That is to get Biden. She thought that Biden would be so uptight during the State of the Union that he wouldn't be able to say Laken Riley, the woman nursing student at the University of Georgia who was murdered by a undocumented person who had gotten into the country under less than, well, I don't think it was less than legal means. Essentially he came in paired with somebody else, and I don't think they really pretended they were married or anything, but I think they came in as a couple, and he has a relative in New York, and so I guess he was, it's very difficult for undocumented people to get work and all those kinds of things, and so, and I'm sure there's other kinds of stories related to this, but he winds up in the Atlanta area, and then has had some other criminal police trouble, and that didn't seem quite clear. And of course, police don't serve as ICE officers, so you can commit crimes and shit and not be deported. So the whole legal system has all these weirdnesses built into them. Particularly as you have sanctuary cities and a variety of other things. So this is a target for Republicans because this example fits their trope, their meme that all of these, the attempt to generalize that every person coming over the border is potentially a criminal, which is not true. It's simply not true. And that the numbers are incredible, and they're not really that incredible. In fact, they haven't. I think they're about the same levels they were in the Obama administration. So it's and of course the background story is the immigration bill that has not passed because Trump needs it to sort of gin up. He wants to be able to win his election on the negative element of it. But the fact is, they worked very hard, including Katie Britt, on this bill in a bipartisan way, and it's ready to go. But of course, El Trumpo doesn't want to do anything about it. So he's just screwing himself. I mean, frankly, it's just the guy doesn't truly. I mean, he understands manipulation and certain power plays, but he doesn't truly understand democracy, which is probably why he doesn't want to have it anymore. And he's meeting with Orban today in Florida, and that should be amusing. We'll never know what happened there. He met with Elon Musk a little bit last week, I think. So that's the front end of the politics. So I think there's going to be a Biden bump from the State of the Union. Otherwise, we'll see the same idiocy that Trump has been cranking out, and Biden will be out on the hustings. There's going to be serious campaigning in the swing states for the next week or so, with both Harris and Biden out there doing stuff. And so we'll see. All of those are interesting. I mean, there's plenty of other interesting stories, but that was probably the most important one from yesterday, since the interwebs decided to make a lot of fun of the junior senator from Alabama. So that's one thing. The other thing, of course, is Ukraine. Ukraine is still hurting for ammunition.
Well, before you get into Ukraine, let me just show you looking to get a paste similar to this. And unlike the diced or the minced chilies I've got in here, those were supposed to be mashed into a paste so you don't see them. Oh, well, forgot.
Yeah.
It'll be reacting with the soda soon. Almost there. Anyway, Ukraine.
Oh, okay. Ukraine is still there. The Russians are insisting that they're really back to the same stuff. In that Putin is pushing the same messaging that it still essentially is a special military operation, and that Ukrainians are really Russians, and that they're just reclaiming all this territory. They had Dmitry Medvedev, the former president, out there, and he's just nuts. Usually gets drunk and says stupid things, but the current plan, of course, is to take over about 3/4 to 7/8 of the current Ukraine, leave a little bit left for Ukraine, but the rest would just be absorbed back into Russia. Now, that's what they really want. They're not going to get it. There's just no way that they have enough combat power to do it. There have been the usual raft of awful videos of people getting killed. It's pretty sad, and they are sending convicts and others, out there getting killed. I mean, a lot of people are dying. I think they're losing anything. It's not so much the casualty numbers are somewhere around 1,000 to 1,500. It depends on I assume how they're counting them. That's not all people who got killed necessarily, but there's a significant number. And if you wanted to count materiel, a significant amount of materiel is being destroyed. Usually infantry fighting vehicles and a variety of other vehicles. But this past week has had there've been airplanes that have been shot down, glide bombs. The Russians are using more glide bombs. There's threats that they're going to use a brand new manufactured heavy duty bomb, but how they're going to launch it is going to be an interesting question. There's a 1,000-pound bomb that they're going to try. I don't know if it's dropped by heavy bombers or if it's a glide bomb or something else. If it is, I think the fact is that the Ukrainian Air Force is probably going to be a lot better, and they're going to lose. If they keep trying to use bombers, they're going to probably lose a couple more. The Russians don't really care that much. On the other hand, they lost another ship this past week, a swarm of drones, and there's some decent video of it. Another smaller patrol boat has a very shallow draft. I think it's equipped with some missiles, but caliber missiles, which are fairly standard field munition, and a bunch some other things, but they're relatively minor in that sense. But they've managed to knock off 4 of them, I think, so far, or 6 of them. And they seem to be easy to hit, and since the Ukrainians are now employing a kind of sort of spread offense, so they attacked the one this week with 5 or 6 unmanned surface vehicle drones. They sit a little bit above the water. They're they're powered by, I think, the same engines that jet skis have, and they come in fairly fast. They have and they take video while they're running in at the Russian sailors keep trying to shoot them down, but the fact is there's so many of them, and it's usually at night. It's fairly complicated. There's some, as I said, there's some good video of whatever happened. I think there was a tanker or something, a commercial ship nearby that took some video as well, so you could see actually see the impacts and stuff like that. That's kind of the way the war is going. Some people thought that when President Zelensky was in Odessa meeting with the president of Greece, the front end of the stories tried to frame it that they were being targeted. I don't think they were being targeted, but there was an air alert and not enough advance warning. So missiles came in at Odessa, which is somewhat rare, but that happened. And so there was speculation about that. There were a couple of more military changes and military leadership. They sent the former head of the armed forces of Ukraine. He's now the envoy to the United Kingdom. So if nothing else, I think it's going to be a fairly cushy thing to be in London and probably do some banking. We'll see. I think one of the reasons for doing it, of course, is to sort of keep him away from Ukraine itself, I suppose, by putting him in, on the one hand, a powerful position. On the other hand, he's not anywhere near, the military. Because there is some suggestion that he might be a rival for president in the post-war Ukraine. All of these things are speculative. There's a little bit of ratcheting up by the intelligence services of the Baltic states, Lithuania, Estonia. They seem to have they're doing a lot of work. And so along with Sweden becoming a member of NATO this week, a lot of speculation about what Russia is going to do. There's much more general talk about how it's going to include more NATO elements. That is, France and a variety of other countries have suggested they might send troops to Ukraine. Ukraine has applied for NATO membership. I think it's going to be the case that troops might get sent simply to allow the Ukrainians to have more personnel to actually do the frontline battle and combat. I mean, they've technically mobilized 1 million troops, but a lot of that, you have a frontline troop of probably 250,000 or something, all spread out along the 600-kilometer line of contact, and then you have a lot of advanced special operations folks and other things. So that's kind of what's going on. The front end of the reporting is that the Russians are making gains, but these are gains that are like a couple of kilometers. There's nothing like a major advancement, although the suggestion is in the next month or two that there may be a Russian offensive, likely in the somewhere in the northeast. That is, there's this entire belt there, and in the northern component of that, there may be some attacks. And there, of course, the usual things, catching fire and exploding deeper in Russia. Oil refineries, an ammo plant went up. There are some partisans, I think, or some people are doing what they normally do. There's an anarchist group in Russia that blows up Russian relay boxes and rail relay boxes, so that they really seize upon certain types of sabotage. So that's happened as well. There was, and I think it's a fake, but the Moscow and the American Embassy released some news this morning, that for the next 48 hours, there's an alert the U.S. embassy said that people should take care in Moscow because supposedly the Russian security services thwarted a ISIS terror plot. Now, this is kind of the first thing anyone's ever heard of it, and it seems a little like bullshit, but they did mention it. The U.S. embassy is doing its due diligence, so Americans need to be careful for the next 48 some odd hours. That's what's sort of going on. I would hope that other things will get cured, etc. But it's a wide range of things. It's curious that delays in the delivery of F-16s has happened. Ammunition, I think they've actually solved the ammunition problem, even though there's all this whining about not having enough ammo. A whole bunch of EU countries have either transferred or promised to manufacture more ammunitions, a whole bunch of ammo, and upwards of around 1 million rounds from some places that have been that they've been authorized. Whether they get delivered, I think that's the other thing that Zelensky keeps complaining about, is that there's all this PR that says they've been allocated, but not enough is getting delivered quickly. So that's the range of activity that's happening. How's it frying?
Yep, we're toasting the seeds and steaming the cake.
So when you're putting water for a steaming basket, how much water do you put in?
Just above the line there.
Uh-huh. And is that a 2-tiered basket? That is,
yep.
Have a
yeah, 2 tiers.
I mean, I'm thinking of getting one myself. That's why I haven't gotten down to my local Asian store to.
They're quite handy.
Yeah, I'm going to experiment with rice noodles. I want to do thick rice noodles. And,
making them. I was thinking about making the rice pancakes, the Vietnamese style ones. They're very or I guess they all come from China originally. The ones you do on a thin mesh.
Right.
This thing here.
Excellent. Yum.
You lay this over the steamer and then put the rice over. It steams real quick.
Mm-hmm.
I've never managed to do them correctly, though.
Well, that's what I have trepidation about doing it, but I think I have all the components to do it now. It is one of the few things that is not made regularly in my region, and I'm very, sort of lazy that I grew up being able to have that every day, and clearly something I haven't had in quite a while. And it's actually quite expensive when you get the things that are
ready-made,
that are prepared foods of one kind or another. So
the fresh prepared.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but that's the thing with those original foods. I have plenty of comments on other matters. I think that's pretty much all I want to say about Ukraine. Stuff happens every day. It's frightening how much it happens, and it's even more awful to watch. They've included images that I don't think are as widespread or as ubiquitous as they might suggest, but it seems that the discipline within Russian troops is that they're afraid of dying because if you get wounded, you might actually be terminated simply because they don't have the capability to help
liability.
Yeah, some people commit suicide. In other words, if they get wounded out in the field, because the Ukrainians have these surveillance drones, you can actually watch while someone, after getting wounded, suddenly decides to take their own life, which is pretty scary to watch. Most of those do have sensitivity filters on them on the internet, but you know the internet's pretty can be pretty grisly at times. A lot of those images, and the stuff that I post at midnight has a couple of them only because I actually try to minimize those. It mainly looking at explosions of vehicles rather than individuals being bombed in trenches and stuff, which is on the one hand quite visceral. On the other hand, you know, it's unnecessary carnage. But there is plenty of carnage. Let's just put it that way. The first Abrams tank got nailed last week. That is the American Abrams M1 M1A2. I think they transferred 30 of them to the Ukrainians, and so one of them got hit, and that was a big deal to the Russians. They whacked a Bradley fighting vehicle, and they thought so much of it that they, made a big deal out of that as well. Because it's American, that's kind of the Russians are trying to get a lot of propaganda out of it, which is kind of weird and needless to say, disproportionate to the actual losses and whatever from the battlefield. Anyway, so there are advances by the Russians on all fronts. The advances aren't very large, but they are advancing on probably in every sector, and it's sort of unfortunate, but that's kind of where we are. And I don't. The anticipation in the writings is that I think the Ukrainians want to be able to survive 2024 and to be able to have a big push in 2025. This is problematic because they expected to do that actually this last summer, and it didn't happen because the Russians built better defenses. And in fact, today they started talking about, and this is the first time in a while that the Ukrainians were talking about the construction of their own defensive lines, which seems a little strange. They haven't talked about their defensive lines at all as a PR thing. Well, in fact, they don't. The Ukrainians don't talk about anything. So what most of the news has Russian bias built into it. There is official accounts by the Ukrainian ministries, but they are sufficiently vague that you don't really know what's going on in any particular region, and you don't know the placement of units and there's a lot of open source folks who run around and find, what's going on where. So there's all that. That's pretty much my little Ukrainian wrap for today. I don't know if that's sufficient, but, you can always stop by Daily Kos around midnight Eastern time. I put up a little page. It's not very long, but it has a lot of the numerical details for culled from the internet to what got hit, what got destroyed, damaged, etc., casualty figures, trends, official announcements from the UK Ministry of Defense, summaries of key incidents, and there are a wide range of them. Some pretty interesting ones that have to do with kind of weird peripheral things, political elements and etc. And so while it seems a little weird to be talking about Estonia, it actually does figure into the larger, Poland is now sort of rattling a saber on that line in terms of its commitments to NATO, and I think they're trying to do that because the Baltic states were kind of being nervous. So there's a whole variety of little things going on that we don't really know what's going on, and that's kind of this kind of hybrid warfare is problematic because a lot of it does rely on media coverage, and there's very few embedded journalists in at least on the Ukrainian side. Well, actually, the Russian side doesn't have any either. It would be pretty ugly, I think. Where are we now with steaming? Starting to steam?
we're we're just about done, almost finished.
Excellent. Excellent.
I haven't read anything interesting in the Norwegian press, but I imagine there'll be a lot of activity between up in the north along the Russian border. We have a lot of
Yes.
U.S. troops as well up there, a lot of U.S. hardware. I'm
Well,
sure.
there's a major winter exercise going on. I can't remember where the hell it is. I think it's in Finland. 40,000 troops, NATO troops. It's Americans, I think Norwegians and Swedes, but there's still snow on the ground, and they're practicing
So
practicing to repel Russians.
where does Finland stand in terms of NATO?
Oh, well, Finland joined NATO before Sweden did.
They were accepted already?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So the Finns, are pretty serious about it, mainly because it is such a sort of long border, and I think at some moment the Finns would really like to have the Karelian, segment of Finland back. I think it's 20% of Finland, the portion that they lost in the Winter War of 1939-40, or the other war, the continuation war of 42-43, or whatever. Anyway, they lost territory to the Russians, and I think they'd love to have them back, because I think it's actually a significant part of Finnish culture. So that's one thing. And
20% is
that's a significant part of the border of the eastern border of Finland. And the Finns have, I think, they're preventing Russian cars with Russian license plates from. They're just trying to keep Russians out of Finland for the present moment. So that's kind of problematic. And then there's the problematic element on the Polish-Ukrainian border, where for some reason there's a protest about Ukrainian grain, and there's blockades and other things going on that are problematic, and they're not quite being dealt with. I think I would assume. And then the rest is all kind of the usual kind of noisy machinations. The Russians trying to say they're doing something about Moldova when nothing's really happening, and then I think they got past the Transnistria problem, but it has some intrigue at the ground level, and I can't recall what that is. But it does have, there are these little things going on. Nothing significant, because the Russians don't want to. They, having lost a bunch of ships, they're not putting anything out there on the Black Sea right now, because the Ukrainians are just do stuff.
Just a big baking note before I forget, which I almost did. You whatever dish you're going to steam the cake in, you need to oil it first, grease it up, and then it tends to stick anyways. So you want to just slice it. Sometimes it's a bit hard to get out, a little sticky. I have to do the inverted version.
Okay. Do you have a preference for ceramic dishes to do your steaming in?
Food safe. Oh, it's come out. Oh, stuck a little bit.
There we go. I always think of mung bean as being dark. I don't know why that is.
Well, there's the green hull. Could make it. Oh, we're a little sticky today.
I'm hungry again. Darn it. Oh, John, you raised your hand. John?
Yes. So can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Loud and clear.
Okay. Um, so
Let's go.
it sounds like some potentially very dangerous news going on in the Ukraine area.
Well, it has there's a lot of saber rattling and lots of promises that one side or another is going to have heavier munitions to throw at each other, and it's a lot of noise because they haven't been doing counts of how much ammunition is being used, but there's a fair amount of ammunition being expended, and the Ukrainians are trying not to expend quite as much.
Right, but I mean in terms of France saying, oh,
Oh,
we may
yes.
have to commit
Saber rattling.
European troops to this war. Um, I mean, that would be a major escalation, certainly from the point of view of Russia.
Well, it
And
depends how it's done. I don't think that you would have, for example, French troops. I would assume that they would not have a combat role, actually. That what they would do is be mainly a support element. The people who are going to be at the front line will be Ukrainians. The Ukrainians are actually quite fastidious about that. All their propaganda um, uses no foreign munitions. In other words, they only, when you see their propaganda films, it's always Ukrainian produced munitions or vehicles or plane, or well, the planes are post-Soviet, but it doesn't, all the things that have been claimed to be supplied to the Ukrainians are not shown in their kind of front end presentation about what they're doing. So I would assume that if you have French or Czech troops, they're going to, mainly do other stuff, the more logistical stuff and whatever to allow the deployment of Ukrainian troops towards the front.
right, but these things tend to occur in steps, and once you become committed, you tend to sink deeper and deeper,
Well, yeah, the Russians will, try and target, to try and make it worse, or whatever, in whatever ways. But troops are fairly easy in that sense. I mean, if they send an entire logistical force to support F-16s, for example, you could send several thousand people and you would never notice it.
right. I mean, but this is the way, America got involved in Vietnam.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
First
Absolutely.
it was advisors and then support people, and then the French said we're out of here, and the
Well, I
Americas,
mean, they got embarrassed so badly. Tactically, they were,
yeah. Yeah, I just think it's very it's potentially catastrophic, which is I've been warning about from the beginning of this conflict,
yes,
and I
yes.
think they should press for a deal.
Well, that
I
was
don't
the
see that happen.
problem for every week. That's the problem, is a lot of people want to get a deal, but no one wants to discuss it. Truly, there's very little discussion going on. It is this kind of the Ukrainians say, all they have to do is leave and the war's over.
Yeah,
Huh.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
They got a point there.
yeah. I mean, France could have said that to the Nazis, right? Uh,
Oh, well,
they would have been right.
yeah, but the surrender monkeys actually, they capitulated when you consider divisions between, Vichy France and whatever. And it really truly capitulated to the Germans by sending Jews into the Holocaust. But anyway, that's another story.
Well, I think most European countries did that, didn't they? Well, I guess they didn't have some of them didn't have a choice at all. But...
Some of them didn't have a choice, and some were, collaborated more rather than less. And I think that was an issue relative to France and who was a collaborator, who wasn't a collaborator, and and then the whole labor thing, also equally problematic. It's so awful.
But if only we had trust in the market and not diplomacy.
The market.
Yeah. Well, hang on. That's what's got us here, isn't it? If only we had trust in diplomacy and not the market.
Well, the problem with the market is that we're still in sort of winter, and fossil fuel is still being traded from Russia to Europe, and we're paying, or Russia, the EU is paying money to Russia. I mean, it's just like this. I mean, there may be new sanctions for all kinds of other reasons, but they're not enough sanctions, let's put it that way, and particularly on this fuel issue.
I believe we should put our trust in mung.
Mung.
Beans are the future.
Is Mung the name of the AI that runs the markets?
Mung the Merciless. That's my big. That's my role model, Ming the Merciless.
He's a legend.
So this is a mung bean cake.
Nice.
With toasted cumin, sesame, mustard seed, curry leaves, some fresh chili, and coriander, and coconut, desiccated coconut.
Yum.
Got a nice fluffy taste. Oh, this one maybe is a little denser. Probably could have put a little extra.
Chewy,
little
right?
Extra lift. It's not too chewy. It's really remarkable. It's almost like a traditional American yellow cake. Nice
nuclear.
and fluffy.
Nuclear yellow. Anyway.
Moist and not so beany.
Nice. Yum. Yum, yum, yum. Okay, well, that's my the end of my little Ukrainian wrap. There's other issues. The Houthi may attack the internet connection, the major interconnection sea cables in the Red Sea. That's an issue that's coming up.
Those are running from the Suez, or where did they go?
Yeah, down the Red Sea, etc., and over through to India or whatever. There are major internet cables that they're claiming that the Houthi may go attack. I doubt that. I don't think they have necessarily the technology to sort of do that, and they should know that the second they attack that, there's all hell's going. The whatever the coalition is that is bombing missile sites, they're not well protected, and I think they're doing. Whoever's doing the damage on the Houthi are doing a fairly good job.
We'll probably lose half the left internet. They'll turn right wing if that shit happens.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's going to be a BFD if they attack because it's kind of a choke
tubes.
point. Yeah, it's going to be a big deal. I mean, anytime cables get attacked, it's just bad juju, as they say, for all concerned. And so that's the other thing. And then in Africa, there's a whole bunch of little stuff going on. Mali, Burkina Faso, there's stuff going on. It's not like there
Sudan.
isn't the Sudan. It's not like there isn't war going on. There's war going on everywhere. Well, not everywhere, but a lot wider range of war going on, of a variety of types. Aside from discussions of, that are much more lethal. And then there's other things that we don't talk about since they fucked up or screwed up. Sorry. That
family show.
They sent that thing to the moon and it fell, it fell over, and I don't think they're going to be able to get it to fix itself. It seems to me they should have had that contingency included in their design, that the thing could snag and fall over, right? I mean,
it's always a possibility.
Oh, I'm just saying, I mean, that's half the battle when you're thinking about little robots and robot fighting shows.
They had a lot of like puffy balls that they land on and then deflate and roll off that. But I think due to the design of the structure, they needed to have it, unless they were trying to mimic the old school lander.
I think they were, and that's why it fell. It tripped on
Pretty
something and
anachronistic.
Well, it's just a lot more engineering to put those puffy things on it, I think. But
they shouldn't try to land on their balls. That's
indeed.
Not a good plan. But there's a request, and that we elaborate on the Houthi attack, and what that means. I mean, if they were to attack that cable, how much damage would that do to the internet? And
it cut off. It would what the 20%, 40%. They're talking about a fair amount of traffic that would get kind of screwed up.
London and Hong Kong would be severed.
There's a fair amount of traffic that goes through those. When you look at the submarine cable maps, it always hugs the shore. You don't have there are big cables, of course, that go, for example, the transatlantic cable system is pretty wide, but aside from those kind of connections, there aren't that many when you really look at the submarine cable maps. So they're kind of bunched into these smaller places, like the red, what the Houthi want to attack. The problem is, of course, they centralize a variety of activity as well, and I don't think they have the tech to try and do it I mean, if they did it, they would do it in a kind of really crude sort of way, and I don't think they have the tech to do it. Or they should get the Iranians to do it. That's a whole nother story, I suppose.
But if they were to do it, I mean, it wouldn't be that difficult to repair because somebody could part the Red Sea, right?
Ah, indeed. I've been, for some reason, I was looking at not that I believe in any conspiracy theories, but I was looking at the Malaysian airline crashes, the 370 and 17, 17, the one that crashed in Ukraine, and 370, the one that crashed in the south of India or whatever, in the Indian Ocean. Because they still haven't recovered. They still haven't found the exact crash site for that one. It's been a decade now. Anyway, I was just slightly interested in that, and it was weird that you would have two events like that, and when you start getting too far into it, you really go down a conspiratorial rabbit hole. For example, there were two people on the 370 flight who were Iranians who had stolen passports. One Austrian and the other one, I don't know, something else. But anyway, they apparently were not suspicious enough. And, I mean, it still boils down to a pilot, the suspicion of the pilot being involved somehow. But anyway. I just, it is curious, but on the other hand, I think it does have explanation. The facts, of course, are that they still haven't found the wreckage. And more interesting to me was that it affected an entire body of regulatory activity about how you have to redesign the black boxes so they last longer, and there's a whole bunch of new regulations, and which probably should have been there anyway. And just interesting stuff, and how much it's the most expensive search that has ever been executed for something on the ocean. I've been 120 million or something. There's a lot of money went into trying to find this darn plane. Anyway, and of course it is just curious, and it is a plane that still, it doesn't have issues so much as it's doesn't have major issues. It tends to get shot down by stuff, or as happened a couple of days ago, lost a wheel on takeoff. Right, a Boeing 777. The wheel flew off after they, took off. They even have videotape of the wheel flying off. It's pretty weird.
Rolling down the runway.
Well, it just had taken off this, like, only a couple 100 feet above, and then see this video with the wheel dropping out. And I mean, it caused a lot of damage, and fortunately no one got hurt, but it destroyed a whole bunch of cars and shit.
Speaking of taking off,
you make that sound like
it's about time for us.
Oh, it's time. Yes, it is probably time to go. John, what's coming up in Twilight Zone in 30 minutes?
So tonight on A Guided Tour into the Twilight Zone, we have a 4th season episode that stars Steve Forrest.
Whoa.
And he is the brother of last week's guest star, Dana Andrews. And this is a story about space travel and what can happen that you might not expect.
Yuri bongos. Anyway,
yes.
And later on, after the Twilight Zone, Harsh will be showing us some more Indian history and discovery of India. Harsh, did you want to speak a little bit about that?
Sure. So tonight, basically, we're going to So it's a 2-parter episode, and we'll learn about Mahabharata. So one of the major mythology that's part of the Hindu religion itself. And it's pretty fascinating, actually. There is no good and bad guys. You do have two sides, but it's pretty interesting.
Okay.
And what do I get as a rating for the dhokla tonight? Passing grade?
Yummy. Looks yummy.
I don't see the texture, actually. It's hard to figure that.
No.
Get it up there close.
Smooth or grainy?
You see the fluff?
No,
it looks fluffy. It looks fluffy.
Yeah, looks cool.
It should be fluffy, right? Right, Joe and Harsh?
Yeah.
Well, they squeeze it like how spongy it is.
That is. It's so lovely. It's just so moist, and it's amazing. It blows my mind that it's beans, basically. That you've got this light and fluffy bean cake.
Joe, did you knew about this?
Texture's amazing.
Yeah, did you knew about this thing before, Prash?
Yeah, but it sounded, the recipe sounds like a pain in the ass, and I tend to avoid anything that's remotely close to baking. But this is straightforward. I did it in under half an hour, basically. It's 15 minutes to steam, and you just have the main trick is to get the baking soda to citric acid ratio correct. So I probably could have gone at this one. I put half a teaspoon in. Should put 3/4. and would have gotten more fluffy or less water in the paste.
Mm.
But you can make this with normally, I guess this is made with besan, the chickpea flour, garbanzo flour, or you can use fresh. If you do the fresh soaked beans, I think it tastes better consistency usually. You can use dried. This is fresh. These are mung beans. You can use semolina. You can use dal. You can use chickpea, and so on. It's very versatile.
Could you make it into a dessert by using something like red bean, or would that work?
You could do. I think
Just
the dhokla beans are. I think they're not quick cooking enough. Maybe I haven't tried, but I did earlier in the week make this. I made an almond vanilla version of this, sweet.
Yum.
Not nicely. So for people who have allergies, wheat allergies, don't eat eggs, especially vegans, this is an incredible replacement for any of the egg replacers or whatever to get that texture. You do get proper cake texture in this.
Gluten free, right?
Yep. Well, I snuck a little semolina in there just because I love the taste. and it could mask a little of the beany taste if there's a
This is getting political, Joe. It sounds like you're talking about replacement theory.
Gluten will not replace us.
Joe, did you add rice to it or not?
No.
Okay.
A little semolina. Rava.
Got it. So because I think for dhokla you need rice. If you do not have rice, I think it's called khaman. It's the same thing, but
I didn't.
Different.
I didn't see that in any of the recipes. Oh, maybe a little bit of rice flour.
Yeah.
They said you could add a little rice flour if it's too wet.
Yeah, I know people are passionate about, like, if you call it dhokla, they get irritated. It's not, does not have rice.
It sounds like paella in Spanish.
Oh crap! What the?
Joe, I have a general question about cooking for other people. What if you don't like some kinds of food, but you are expected to make it? How do you do that? How do you test it or taste it to know that it's any good if you don't like it yourself?
You're being forced to make something you don't like.
Yeah, if you work at a restaurant,
I'm
sure there's chefs who don't like some of the food they're supposed to cook for people at some restaurants.
Sure. You just do little taste tests. You just have a tasting spoon and you're just tasting a little here and there.
This tastes like crap, but man, they're gonna love it. Just not.
You're just looking for the correct salt, sugar, and sweet. The acidic saltiness, savoriness. That's all you're checking for. You're not really looking to enjoy it. You're not even thinking about enjoying it. You're just saying, does this have all of the right level?
Obviously, the restaurants I worked in were much lower class. The 3-second rule was the main thing.
I guess we're about ready to close. We should remind people that the autonomouscollective.net is, if anyone sees this, come on by. We love having more people. We'll see you next week, I suppose.
Yes.
Stick with us. We'll try and do better next time.
Take care, everyone. See you next week.
Wow.